It's time for our July 2018 Plan With Me. The farmer's market is our theme this month with its produce, preserves, fruits, and berries. We'll do a monthly cover page, a calendar, some fruity watercolors, and more. Welcome back. My name's Shayda Campbell, and in today's video, our July Plan With Me. As I said, we're doing a farmer's market theme. Chris and I just love going to the farmer's market here in Charlottetown. We have an amazing summer market. Just love going on Saturdays and buying all our fresh produce. And I think that's something a lot of us can connect on, that experience of going to the market, especially at this time of year, and seeing all the local produce that's so beautiful. And even if you're not a big fan of going out to the market early on a Saturday morning, you've probably seen about a gazillion Instagram photos of that top-down shot of all the summer berries in their little blue and green paper crates. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm doing my layout this month. So let's just get started. So I'm starting with my cover page, and I've sort of sketched it out here if you can see, but it's a bordered in illustration, I guess you would call it, sort of like the bunny image that we did in April, where there's this rectangle on the page, and I just think that's a really nice way to lay out a bullet journal cover page. I'm certainly not alone in that. I think a lot of people like that. It just gives you this beautiful border of blank space. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing in that border. I always do a double line. It's since I rarely use a ruler and I like that hand-drawn line, it's just easier to make a double line look good. And then where I'm going to put the month title, July, I'm drawing in this little cute country banner. So there's something farmer's market about this theme, and there's something a little bit county fair as well. And to do this banner, you just want to use very loose lines. If you don't get the shape quite right, just again, use that double line and then a few sketchy lines to show the movement of the fabric. I'm also going to draw some mason jars, and this one's covered with a piece of linen and tied with a string. Now when you're drawing jars, try to keep the corners and the sides a little bit rounded, and then I find drawing a double line, like a very obvious double line, is a great way to show glass because it's sort of thick, and a few lines as a reflection. Okay, and I'm also going to tackle these little cardboard crates that the berries come in, and you just want to put the sort of indents on the bottom, and that upper border really shows what they are. Just give it that very crate-like shape that everyone has come to know. And then you can draw in some berries, and you can do whatever, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, apricots, anything that you love, blueberries, and don't worry about drawing them perfectly. You know, when I do the berries, I really like making them sort of wonky shapes because that's how they are in nature. And a double line across the front of the crate there just gives it a little more depth. Although I do admit this illustration is not sort of, there's no real perspective here. Everything's just sort of sitting on top of one another, but it's just for fun, and that's what I love about bullet journaling. I want to mention that our tutorial today is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in things like hand lettering, watercolor, design, photography, and a premium membership gives you unlimited access to quality classes from experts in their field, so you can gain new skills and do the work you love. And I have a special offer for the first 500 people that sign up using my link. And I also have a giveaway if you can tell me what video editing technique I learned on Skillshare and used in this video. So watch to the end of today's tutorial for the details about both of those. And you can see here I've drawn another crate, and this is a different style of crate. It's more like a wooden fruit crate or grocery store crate, and it just comes together with a few specific details like drawing some lines on there to make it look like wood, and maybe putting some staples to give it that grocery store look. I've also filled the crate with these lumpy, bumpy shapes, and those are my raspberries. And then I'm going to do one more mason jar, and this one is sort of an old-fashioned mason jar, and it has a little gift tag on it and some sprigs of lavender tied across the front. Again, for the jars, it's nice to do that very obvious double line to indicate glass, and then for the lid, I'm doing some lines across the front where the sort of indents would be on the metal lid. On my banner, I'm going to write July in my best sort of loose, simple cursive and just leave it at that. And then I want to draw some loose fruit just sort of rolling around in the foreground here, so that's why I hadn't totally finished that crate. And I'm just drawing some more strawberries and raspberries. And then of course I will finish off that crate and the jar as well. Anything that I sort of left unfinished because I knew I wanted to do some fruit in the foreground, I'll just quickly finish up. And now I like the look of this sort of loose fruit rolling around in the front. It just adds a little more interest and movement to the piece as a whole. And at the last minute here, I decided I wanted to put some blueberries in this jar because that's going to just be something that I won't have to leave blank. I do want to color this cover page, which is something I don't always do, but I thought, well, this one seems like it would be a shame to leave it blank since it has all this colorful fruit. So that's why I did the blueberries, so I wouldn't just have this big negative space on both jars. But although I am coloring it, I am still sticking to a very neutral, simple theme. And I'm just going to use 3 colors, my warm gray, and then the burgundy and the blue that you see in the top corner here. And I think that's a really nice choice when you're illustrating. It's a nice thing to sort of pick a color palette and stick to it. And even if that means doing the tops of the strawberries blue, I love that when you read a children's book and they've just chosen this very specific color palette and they haven't strayed from it at all. So that can be a nice choice. Yes, it's just your bullet journal, but you can make some decisions that will, sort of influence the project and maybe make it a little more sophisticated or elevate it a little bit. And in terms of my specific color palette here, I did have to make some decisions, and I decided to only color in the strawberries and the cherries, which are the round ones in the back there, and the blueberries, of course, in the blue. I left the raspberries white because I just thought having 3 berries all in burgundy might be a little much, and I didn't want to add another color, basically. And the warm gray was really great, as you can see here, for sort of all the wood, the linen on the jar, and it just is a great way to add a little shadow. I'd like to know if you're doing the same theme, what color palette would you choose? Would you go like more of a cool gray or a brown? Maybe you would do peach and pink for the berries. You could do peaches and raspberries, that kind of thing. So let me know. And the next thing I'm doing here is filling in this negative space in the middle with a quote. And this is a Robert Frost quote that goes, "We love the things we love for what they are." And that to me is so about summer. Summer, isn't it all about loving the little things, the farmer's market trips, the berries? And you can see I've written 2018 in the gift tag that hangs on the mason jar, and that's just sort of a cheeky way to add the year to my monthly cover page. And then I added a lot of cross hatching and line shading. I thought that is what this piece really needed. The color palette I think scared me a little, and I wanted to elevate it and make it a little more grown up. So I added some burgundy and navy and black cross hatching and line shading to everything. The berries, the fabric, the glass, it all got a lot more shadow and depth because of lines. So not only the black lines, but the navy and burgundy pen added a lot as well. Okay, next we're gonna do something fun and use my Dimeo vintage label maker. I will link one of these in the description. They come with different color tapes. I like the black, it's very classic. And you can just print out the label with the days of the week, like Sunday through Saturday, and we'll come back to that later, but it's sort of a fun idea. Now I used a ruler. This is going to be my sort of month at a glance page. I used a ruler to draw a line all the way down the length, and then I sort of went in and did a double line by hand. And then I just did a pattern made up of different berries, flowers, leaves here, using the strawberries, the raspberry shapes, the blueberries, and then mixing in a few little blossoms and leaves. But it makes a nice simple pattern that's a lot of fun to illustrate. And I used my warm gray marker to go in, and I just colored in the larger strawberry. Well, all of the strawberries, but they were the largest berry, so they got some color. And then I stuck in my days of the week label, and that was an idea I saw on an Instagram bullet journaling account called Bullet by R. She has some really nice stuff. I wrote month at a glance above the days of the week, or above the calendar, and then I wrote July 2018 just in a faux calligraphy style on the right-hand corner of the page. Now, when I draw the month calendar grid, I like to lay out the axis with pencil ahead of time so that I get a calendar that's the right size. I like something that's almost as long as it is wide, so I like to space my lines a little more on the horizontal axis, if that makes sense. And then I wrote some of my sort of goals, important dates, to-do lists. I just wrote them in cursive, put a rectangular box around them, and then just shaded it a little bit on the left hand or the right hand side and the bottom. And just by thickening those lines on whichever side you decide to do it on, it gives it a nice shadow and depth. And that's something I've seen a lot online as well. And it's just a nice, simple idea that adds a nice depth to the page, but is really as easy as thickening the lines. A few X's, and then I just put in my important dates and my goals. I put one to-do list on the main page, and it's just sort of my larger to-do list for the month. Things like clean the car once this month. But of course, I have many more to-do lists on every weekly page. And a few more strawberries, just sort of bring the whole thing together and give you a little area for your notes or whatever else you want to put in there, maybe a pretty quote. And guys, I just wanted to mention that patrons of the channel have access to the monthly cover page and the monthly layouts. Everything's available on my Patreon for $2 a month, so definitely check it out. There's tons of bonus content. And next we're gonna do a fun watercolor, just something really artsy and simple to put in our bullet journal. This month I wanted to do something that really felt like summer, and whenever I think summer, and especially farmers market and berries, I think canning and berry picking and making jams. So what I'm doing here is sort of like a recipe card inspired painting, but I also wanted it to seem sort of like in between a recipe card and a rough painting. So you can see I'm doing some color swatches across the top. So I'm sort of planning out my color palette, and I just sort of want that to be part of the piece. So this piece is very rough and sketchy and fun and simple. And I'm doing all my different berries. And then of course the colors that I'm using for the entire piece are just these 4 simple colors. So again, I've chosen a color palette that is quite simple and limited, and that's, I'm hoping, gonna give this piece a little more sophisticated feel. And you can see I'm using the watercolors very loosely to add the sort of the shapes of some berries and a mason jar. But once I'm done with that, I'm just letting them dry, and then I'm really going to add the bulk of the detail to the piece here with my pen, my Pigma Micron. So I'm putting summer berries across the top as the title. I'm adding lots of detail to the berry illustrations with the pen. They're very, very simple when it comes to the watercolor bit, but I'm adding all that sketchy, illustrative, fun stuff with my black artist pen. And I've mentioned this on the channel before, but when you're illustrating plants, you really want to look at a photo so that you get little details right, like the shape of the leaves. Do the leaves have a lot of toothy bits, that jagged edges, or are they very smooth and simple, like the blueberry leaf? And choosing to use those simple details in your illustration will really help your illustrations come to life, and people will say, oh, that really does look like the raspberry plant or blackberries like I'm doing here. And you can see I've just written in some fun bits about when I can these berries and what I like to can or what I like to bake. So I've created a fun little seasonal schedule of the berries and when they're available and when I can start preserving them. And then I'm just using washi tape to put the illustration or the watercolor piece into my bullet journal. Glue always sort of makes the pages look a little lumpy, and washi tape adds a nice decorative element as well. This one's got polka dots on it. Okay, and there's my bullet journal for this month, all ready to be used. I love the cover page, especially with all that line shading that was added. And then of course I have my little preserve schedule and then my month at a glance. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring our tutorial today. What I love about them is the volume of classes. Search something like journaling and you'll not only find bullet journaling, but illustrated art journaling and travel journaling. And that's something that we sort of got into last week with our Traveler's Notebook tutorial. But you can go so much further with all these courses online. Now, I took some video editing courses this week, and if you can name the effect that I learned and then used in this tutorial, the first person to name it in the comments wins a set of Speedball Elegant Writer calligraphy pens. And the first 500 people to use my link in the video description get 2 free months tacked on to their subscription to Skillshare. So for a bonus 2 months, use my link if you're one of the first 500. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Head over to Patreon if you're interested in the channel bonus content like the monthly printable planner layouts, and I will see you next week with a new tutorial.